Good morning, team. Uwe Jacobs, property strategist from Property Friends. Another beautiful day in paradise. Life is fun in the fast lane. Have a look at these surroundings. Behind me is a golf course. Stunning. I love Townsville. I've stayed with friends overnight. We've cooked up the storm. And life is good. I love it. So today's subject, NDIS, is it worthwhile? What's it all about? What are the pitfalls? Well, let me start off by saying it is definitely worthwhile. Not only from a financial aspect, but I also believe in doing the right thing by people that are less fortunate than we are. I don't mind at all being involved in providing housing for people with disability. I reckon it's a good thing to do. I reckon it's the right thing to do. So how do we do it? Well, if you only do it for the, say, 8 to 10% net return, let me be straight out. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. It is nice to get a great rental yield, but that's not what it's all about. There are a lot of marketing companies that are playing in this sphere for the reasons of the very high returns. And there's a lot of shenanigans going on, especially in not disclosing all the issues around NDIS. And that is something that I wanted to cover, just to provide general information on what you need to be aware of, what we need to be aware of when we want to get into a National Disability Insurance Scheme, NDIS SDA, Specialist Disability Accommodation. Well, first of all, build it and they will come doesn't work. So it's not like a typical investment where we've got a huge range of potential tenants. This is a specialized house, a specialized investment. So one suggestion is to definitely make sure that there is demand, and in an ideal world that there are some tenants lined up for the house to be built. We, for example, are in discussions here in Townsville with providers at the moment, with a number of providers, to make sure that the houses that we will be finishing in 12 to 18 months have tenants. So that's one big point. Make sure that you have connections or tenants lined up very, very early. What that also means is that you can customize the house to their needs to a degree. There are 4 different levels in NDIS, but really the house is set up in a minor way and customized to the occupant. Now, I hear you saying, well, heck, that's a lot of money. And what do we do if this occupant moves out? Well, typically, if you set it up right and you've got the right tenants, you have a tenant for 20 years. And that is one of the big attractions of the NDIS, to have long-term tenants with extremely good rental yields. Also be aware that you cannot just rent these houses out because it is part of the NDIS. You need to be renting the house by, the house needs to be rented by an SDA, Specialist Disability Accommodation provider. Now, when I started looking at this subject matter, quite frankly, I didn't want to be a provider because there's a whole lot of legislation, a whole lot of rules, regulations, and a framework in place that is very, very tight. And so it should be, for sure, because we are working in an area where at times also mentally handicapped people are renting these houses. So that is due and proper. But in our case, it has cost us in excess of $15,000 and 3 months just to work up the procedural side. We had to be audited by Coopers and Lybrand, who did a great job, by the way. And we came through with flying colors. But it is a lot of work. And we decided at the beginning, when we embarked on the NDIS journey, that it was impossible, next to impossible, for every one of the owners to become a provider. Hence, we stand in front of them and are the provider. So that's a cost that you need to allow for. A cost on top of the local rental management. So that is something that is not often talked about when these, I nearly used a different word, when these galas, these marketeers are talking about 12, 14, 15, 16, 17%. None of those costs are ever included. They cannot be. Now, another thing is that you need to provide for a sinking fund. That is just risk mitigation. There can be modifications that the tenant needs, demands, and has to get. And that comes out of the revenue. Now, there are certain modifications that will be funded by the NDIS, but to put a set of grab rails on, for example, is up to us, the landlords. So you're well advised, in my view, we are well advised to establish a sinking fund. Nobody tells you about that. So there's a number of cost factors, sorry, a number of cost factors that are usually being kept fairly quiet. Depending on what level of SDA you're going for, we have the improved livability, we have the fully accessible, we have the robust, and we have the high physical care. So depending on which of those 4 categories you go for, there is special fit out. Under high physical care, for example, it usually means a class 3 building, which, be careful people, there are some builders out there that build high physical care under class 1A building. In my view, I question whether it's legal, but if ever anything happens, I dare say the insurance will look into the codes, and I wouldn't risk that. So in the case of a high physical care building, it's a category 3 building. You need sprinkler system, you need a 2-hour backup power system, and all sorts of other things that are in the specifications and that are, of course, increasing the cost and also the complexity. The biggest thing is the management processes are very, very tight. There's a lot of reporting going on. And again, I think that's due and proper. A lot of reporting going on that the providers, including the SDA provider, have to do. There are monthly meetings with the SIL providers, with the other people involved in that game. So there's a lot of admin that needs to be understood, that needs to be included in the deal. So yeah, but it's definitely a very worthwhile investment, and provided that you find the right partners, we, as always, set up strategic alliance partners. Thanks for the thumbs up. It is really, really fun to be able to provide accommodation to people. We were discussing with a provider here in Townsville. They're looking for a robust home for a young guy that is turning 18 in 18 months. And he will have to stay in a retirement home if he doesn't get a house. So I reckon it's fun to be able to provide for such things. And if it's a win-win, why not do it? So on that note, I wish you a good Sunday. Let's have lots of win-wins. Take care. Bye-bye.